Is part of this ability, does it come from, you mentioned in your book, the story we tell about ourselves to ourselves? That, there's a narrative that we've got about how we've seen our life or how we see our makeup or how we see our strengths or how we see our weaknesses. Is that part of what helps people then be bold, be courageous? Because I can tell two stories about myself. I could say I've been a brave man and I've done the following, or I could say I've been a weak-kneed, guy and absolutely done nothing. Therefore, I can't possibly face this conundrum. What's the role of that narrative? Because I thought that was a really interesting part that you talked about in your book, which is the personal narrative. How do we, because it reflects on how you see yourself.
So I skipped one of the C's, and thank you for catching it.
That's why the media is here.
Uh, it was the very first C, actually. But you know what I discovered? The starting point for this project and this thinking was I found that, if you look at the research on human behavior, the economics research says that human behavior can be understood as kind of economic calculus, rational calculus,
Right,
a
right,
cost benefit calculus.
sure,
I look at the cost, I look at the benefits. Okay, then subsequently they've shown that there's a bias in how we do cost benefit. So there's behavioral decision making, some kind of bias. We're not always perfectly rational.
right,
We're systematically non-rational.
right,
So they've been very good at understanding this kind of. In fact, even some research on courage says, "Oh, courage is just a cost-benefit analysis.
right,
Do the cost, do the benefit, and take action if the costs are less than the benefits."
right,
But I found that some of this courageous behavior went beyond that. I mean, Brandon, you can interpret it as cost benefit. And he said that he thought it was cost benefit,
right,
that he was going to get found anyway. But then as he thought about it, it was more than that.
sure,
And what I loosely call interpretive behavior. We interpret the world through a lens of meaning.
right,
We are emotional creatures. We interpret our world through meaning and we interpret ourselves through meaning.
right,
What loosely people call storytelling or narrative building. We craft a story about ourselves. This is who I am. I'm a professor. I'm careful. I'm conservative. I don't take unnecessary risk, or whatever I come up with. Right? I have my own narrative.
right,
And then we look at situations through a lens of meaning. So when I talked to this Ukrainian commando, and he was a mergers and acquisitions lawyer 3 years ago.
hmm,
And he said when he saw what invasion was doing to his country, he felt compelled to do something.
right,
And he had been in the army reserves, but he didn't have to go. He volunteered himself to go because he said, I had to do something. I mean, look at the situation we're in.
right,
So, he felt morally compelled. So we look at situations through the lens of meaning, we look at ourselves. And that's where the courage conversation begins. In fact, the one line I wish everyone takes away from this conversation is Winston Churchill famously said, you know, that I think is a very important quote that I think is central. It's not in the book, by the way.
right,
Fear is a reaction, courage is a decision.
right,
And I think in that interpretive mindset now, we can, if we want, adjust our narrative, change our story, and you change how you choose to operate.
right,
And most of us have debilitating stories that hold us back.
right, right, right. So change your story, change how you've seen things, and find your strengths. One of the things you mentioned in your book too, as well, is that and I've heard this many times, but that we don't see our own strengths, but others do. We seem to have this inability to stare at ourselves in the mirror and say, these are all the things I'm good at. How do you go about finding what your strengths are? I mean, do you start quizzing other people? Do you talk to your spouse? Do you talk to your loved ones, your favorite coworkers, or maybe your best friends? How do you go about discovering figuring out what your strengths are that maybe aren't readily recognizable to you?
So there's two parts to that. One is to discover your strengths,
Yep.
and others can give you positive affirmation and feedback. The other one is having others believe in your ability,
Mm.
to believe in your ability. In fact, I was reading, recently about this priest who would do last rites in hospitals.
Right.
And he found that children, especially the ones who are very close to the parent, when they were saying farewell to their parent, the most common thing they would say, thank you for believing in me.
Mm.
Thank you for believing in me. I am who I am because you believed in me. When others believe in us, it boosts our confidence,
Right.
it boosts our self belief, and it creates the capacity to do things we didn't even think were possible. Now, I have actually also seen this in sports.
Mm.
So I interviewed a number of coaches. Talked to Nick Saban,
Right.
Alabama, legendary Alabama coach,
Yep.
talked to Pete Carroll, talked
Yep.
to Bill Belichick, and a number of others.
Yep.
One of the amazing things great coaches do, what Pete Carroll calls coaching up, you
Yep.
got to coach up people, is increase their belief in themselves.
Yep.
And they'll do that when they believe somebody else believes in them. We all want someone to believe in us. That's one.
Right.
The other one is when you create, let's take another variation on that.
Right.
When you create a cohesive team of people
Yep.
who are not only believing in each other, but are dependent on each other,
Yep.
they start to play not for themselves, but for each other. They don't want to let each other down.
Right.
And when we're playing for somebody else and not wanting to let them down, it elevates our game. So all these things start to play in. So do you see what I'm talking about? So what I discovered was ordinary people. I was like, how did you do that? Like in the Marine Corps,
Right.
they call it relative fear.
Yes.
The fear of letting your teammates down is greater than the fear of dying.
Right.
I can't run away from the battlefield. I mean, the shame I will have to live with is going to be beyond belief.
Far worse than dying in many ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Actually. And the coaching up, and that's an interesting concept too, as well, because you really are building people up at that point too. Saying that I really do believe in terms of what you can do. You talk about commitment. If you're going to be bold, you got to be committed. It sounds like, if I'm correct there. Uh, Talk about that value. What does that do for someone?
So, there's a distinction between saying I'm interested in something versus I'm committed to something, right?
Right.
It's like staying fit
Right.
or I'm committed to a cause.
Yeah.
And I found that this level of commitment only kicks in when you have a deep attachment to that collective.
Right.
So if you look back to organizations, organizations that create almost a cult-like attachment,
Yeah. Yeah.
you'll see their employees will walk through anything, walk through walls for them, and are willing to take bold action. Unfortunately, you see it in small companies again, some of them, where they are able to build that kind of cult-like mindset that we're here to accomplish something and we're going to get it done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you see that in so many. I was, recently reading up about early days of Google.
Right.
You know, that was the environment there. I mentioned to you Netflix, the early days of Netflix. If you
Yeah.
look at the early days of Nike, you look at the early days of Apple or Microsoft, all these companies that are icons today. In the early days, in the early days of Nike, by the way, people would get the swoosh tattooed on their bodies.
No kidding. I did not know that.
Yeah. So there you had that kind of deep form of attachment. But the commitment has then you have to have something to you can't just say I'm committed to this organization.
Right.
It's because that organization stands for something you really identify with,
Sure. Sure.
right? It's something they're trying to accomplish. The mission or purpose of the organization so deeply resonates with you that it's personal.
Right. Right. Very
In fact,
emotional, sounds like. Very emotional,
huh?
sounds like. Very emotional, it sounds like. in many ways.
It's in some ways people call it identity fusion, where my very persona, this organization becomes an extension of me. I take it so personal
Yeah.
that it's me. I feel like it's me.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. You say in your book that large organizations are basically designed for cowardice, and yet in many, but in your book, obviously, you're saying do something contrary. Don't sit around and be a coward. Or you got to take action and all that kind of thing. Um, what's been your experience when you talk to people about this idea that the large organization? I mean, because I mean I've worked for large organizations too as well, so I sort of understand this where the boss and the boss's boss and so forth and so on. Everybody's just trying to protect their own hide, and I'm sure the people who are going to watch this are going to sit there and say, "Yeah, I've been through that too as well," which is we could have gone off and done A, but instead we did B because that was the safer route.
Yeah. So, look, I had a, not to overplay the sports analogy here, but
Sure.
I had a guest speaker in my class, Sir Alex Ferguson, who wrote one of the endorsements for the book. He was the coach of Manchester United,
Right.
and he said that one of the hardest things is to take a winning team and come back and win again.
Right.
And he won many back-to-back championships. So the question he said what happens is it's not that the team gets lazy
Yes.
or comfortable. It's that they're so scared of losing they stop trying to win.
Yeah.
That the fear of making a mistake, the fear of screwing it up, and the whole system is one of don't screw it up, don't make a mistake.
Yeah.
So the whole, and in organization, as we get bigger, we want to have systems of accountability.
Yeah.
Who did what? Who screwed it up? I want to know. I need a throat to choke,
Right.
right? And we want to have predictability, replicability. So don't deviate from standard operating procedures.
Right.
So, in this desire for consistency and accountability, we crowd out innovation, experimentation, and we don't tolerate failure and learning.
Right.
Now, in a highly uncertain world we're in today, we have technological uncertainty, geopolitical uncertainty, regulatory uncertainty.
Right.
Uh, You can't have a system where nobody can try something and it doesn't work out.
Sure.
So, how do you create the capacity for experimentation, learning, failure? That is a key part of the puzzle as well that I think we miss out. And so you create organizations that are basically stifled. The world is changing around, and look at the graveyard of great companies that missed revolutions. Intel is the classic case study.
Yeah.
The founder of Intel wrote a book, Only the Paranoid Survive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And look where Intel is today.
Yeah.
They missed the mobile revolution, they missed the tablet revolution, they missed the cloud revolution, and now they missed the AI revolution. How many things are you going to miss?
Yeah. 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 It's always surprising that they're actually still around too, as well.
Yeah.
I mean that's the big shocker about Intel. I mean that they're still with us, too as well. But it does seem to be an area that I mean, you provided obviously a very very strong way or method here of that what people need to do to get their organization to play to win, which is to allow people to fail in many ways. Go off and experiment, fail, and see what happens. Obviously, you can't risk the entire firm, but maybe if you had somebody dedicated to mobile, for say, let's say in the Intel case, you might have a different Intel today. But that story has been written as it is too as well. And then, just out of curiosity, one of my last questions here, the value of personality. What is it that how much personality plays into success in terms of how people look at themselves or are determined to win or to be victorious? I mean, are there some personalities that you found out that are more inclined to say, I'm going to go for it, I'm going to risk it all, and some personalities are more inclined to sit there and say, no, you know what, I'm going to sit back here in the back seat and see what happens instead.
So, look, first I'll reveal my own biases. I'm not a big fan of kind of attributions to personality because that implies that either you have it or you don't. And if you don't, too bad.
No,
So I think it gives a disempowering message. That's my bias. Having said that, do certain persona types lend themselves to more comfort with fear and uncertainty and taking bold action? Absolutely.
uh,
Absolutely. I mean, there are some people who are congenitally inclined. I mean, I got to know the late Jack Welch real well in the last 15 years of his life. I mean, I understood why he was who he was. He had a certain proclivity to rolling the dice and saying, I'm going to try this and see if it works out.
right,
And if it doesn't, it's okay.
sure,
Right? Um, but having said that, I don't want to make it inaccessible
sure,
to those who may not have that persona because, you know, that's what I think is important to understand. We tend to otherwise over index on extroversion,
right,
kind of risk numbness, numbness to fear numbness or fearlessness.
right,
If you look at some of these characters, they do experience fear,
yeah,
right? They don't show it.
right,
I mean, you when you see Tom Cruise doing the stunts, he never shows any fear. You look at him, he looks very stoic,
yeah, very much so.
right? So I think we need to not get over carried away by that. And because I think his courage, as I said to you earlier, is a decision.
Yeah,
Fear is a reaction. Now, the foreword to the book is written by the Dalai Lama. And in the foreword, the Dalai Lama says, courage is an inner journey. It's for us to find courage in ourselves. It's accessible to all of us. That's the central idea that, courage is accessible to all of us. It's accessible to all organizations as it is to all individuals. You got to decide you want to do it.
yeah,
You
yeah,
want to be it.
right, right. You do, yeah, you do. And when you mention this to your students, what happens in the classroom?
Well, look, I think it's amazing to me how I'll speak for myself. Why pick on my students? I myself did not know what courage was. And I've given us a couple of personal examples in the book about my own parents and my own kind of journey through courage. That I presumed that courage was fearless behavior.
Yeah,
I presumed courage was, limited to the few bold individuals who somehow were able to navigate through fear. And I didn't realize that I too could deliberately become more courageous, be more bold in how I thought about. And by the way, it's physical courage and moral courage. So it's not just only physical courage,
right,
and it's courage in the moment, but it's also courage taken over time. And that was to me an unlock as far as and my presentation to my students is that look, some of you here have done courageous things already.
right,
You might even say, I don't need to listen to you. Hey, I got it. But I want you to be more intentional about it. And those who've never done it, I want to make it accessible to you.
sure,
And so my message is really one of like, hey, you too can do it.
sure,
And I think in today's uncertain world, courage is going to be the currency.
yeah,
In a recent Boston College graduation speech, Dame Louise Richardson said, superheroes are not born in quiet times.
yeah, right. Yeah, true, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And what you're suggesting too is that the courage is accessible to all of us, regardless of our personality, regardless of our makeup. That it's within us too as well to be courageous and to be bold. We just need to go out there, as you said, and go develop it and work on it.
Mahatma Gandhi was fearful of public speaking early in his life.
Right? Sure, of course.
And here's a man who had to speak to millions afterwards,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right? All his life through childhood and young adulthood, he hated public speaking. In fact, he wanted to be a Britisher. He went to England and studied law to become a barrister.
right,
He dressed and walked and talked like an Englishman, and somewhere along the way, he had an awakening.
yeah,
But he had to overcome a lot of his own personal fears
right,
to get to where he did. So,
yeah,
all these characters whom we imagine as heroic individuals
yeah.
had a journey to get to that place.
Right, right, right. Exactly, exactly. And you have to be ready for the journey along the way. Well, Dr. Gulati, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it, and I know the viewers of this video will appreciate it too. I think you've brought some very wonderful lessons that we could all use in our day-to-day lives, personal lives, business lives, and And maybe we've got a politician out there who will watch this too as well, and they'll think about what they're doing too. But Dennis, certainly hope you come
That
back.